Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Whitman-Hanson School Committee meeting of March 10th, 2024. And I wish that everybody would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, I have one public comment, and that is Frank Malisi from Hanson.
How's it going? Frank Malisi, Hanson, 604 Brook Street. I had a general question more about the school agreement and maybe something to help alleviate the budget question that we have. And not sure if it's legal. I haven't checked with council or the state. But is it possible in the school regional agreement to assign a set increase to the school budget every year that the towns would have to be guaranteed to fund, and that the school would be essentially looking for every year? So let's just say a 5% assessment increase to the majority town would be written into the school agreement. At that point, the school would know exactly the increase that it's getting in its budget. The towns would know exactly how to budget for that 5% increase of the majority town. It would provide two things. Number one, less angst around budget season, as I'm sure you all are aware. And then also a way to project into the future the revenues that are needed to fund the school and the town departments, and kind of alleviate the whole budget situation in both towns, not just Hanson. So.
Thanks. We're reviewing the regional agreement right now. That can be a suggestion brought up between the two towns and council.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have the Special Olympics presentation. If you all would come on up.
High School Committee. My name is Jen Newcomb. I'm the program.
Can you get behind the mic there? Thanks, Jen. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jen Newcomb. I'm the Whitman Panthers program coordinator, and these are our athletes. So we have Audrey, Jimmy, Noah, Justin, Eli, David, Jeffrey, and James. And our head coach, Leo.
You guys had a pretty good season.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've been doing basketball, which we just got a bronze. They did very well. They won six games and we lost 2. They did very well in that. And then now we're working at floor hockey, and states is April 7th in Worcester University. And I have Eli, who will just to give a little speech, why she joined the Special Olympics.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Eli. I'm an inclusion ambassador and an athlete for Special Olympics Massachusetts. I'm from Hanson, Mass. I compete in basketball, floor hockey, track and field, swimming, softball, soccer, and flag football. I like being a part of Special Olympics because I get to meet new friends that become like family to me. I get new and more opportunities. I get to play sports and have a chance in them, since traditional sports were more difficult for me. Before joining the Special Olympics, I tried to do traditional sports, and the coaches did not want people who have disabilities on the team because they thought it was not going to help the team in any way. But my mom insisted that I would play, and so I did. It was difficult to understand the rules and had not allowed any accommodations. My teammates at the time told me I should just quit, and they did not want anyone different on the team. That had affected my mental health badly, and so I quit the sports, which was a difficult choice to make, since playing sports is how to help with my mental health and could help my social skills and try and make new friends and help me physically too. Since joining the Special Olympics in 2021, I have grown as a person and gained more confidence in myself. And now I have a lot of friends who are like family to me, as well as help me outside of competitions. My favorite memory so far in the Special Olympics is winning gold for softball, another one playing at Gillette Stadium and at Harvard, another one is dropping the puck at the Men's Northeastern University hockey game. I am really proud of myself for becoming an inclusion ambassador for SOMA. I want to have more people to become aware of the Special Olympics so people with disabilities can be given the opportunity to participate in sports and to help them grow as a person in many positive ways. Without Special Olympics, I wouldn't be here where I am today.
Good job, Eli.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Does anybody else like to say anything? I know? Okay.
Good evening. My name's Leo. I'm the head coach of the Whitman Hanson basketball team. This is our first year that we did. And we, like Jen said, we had a great year. But the one thing I want to point out was, well, this was our first year, and we actually collaborated with Bob Rogers and Tony Costa, the girls and boys team. We came once a week. We alternated girls and boys, and they ran some drills with us, did a lot of different games with us, and we just want to let you know that, and we thank them very much for doing that.
Awesome. Thank you. Noah, you're never quiet. Ever. Right.
Yes, Don. Oh, wait a minute, son.
You want to say something? Come on.
I'm going to make this short and sweet, all right? These guys are great. I love this team, and I'm glad to be here today.
I'm glad to have you.
Glad to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name's George Coffey. Some of you people I've known Beth for about 75 years or so. I recently retired from being involved with Special Olympics because I'm too damn old. The town of Whitman and Hanson have been so supportive of this organization for the, I think, 25 or 30 years it's existed. We do fundraisers once a year. People are unbelievable. We go places, I get contacted by people, they pull up to my driveway, give me an envelope. I don't keep it, I turn it over to Special Olympics, only because the checks have their name on it, otherwise, I might think about it. But where I've been the most surprised for the support we've received is, I don't think you people know how many of the students have been assistant coaches on our teams. They just show up. And they help, they're really, really good. We just had, at hockey practice last night, we had a friend of Eli showed up. She's interested in being an assistant coach. Doesn't know anything about hockey, but she wants to be involved. And we've had kids from Hanson. We have one girl named Dizzy Baker who graduated last year, and she's up in Vermont now in college. She's going into special education because of her involvement with us. She decided that's what she wants to do. And she is in the process of being hired as an intern at the Vermont Special Olympics organization for the state.
That's awesome.
So I think you people should know that. And how many of you know who John Odom is? John Odom used to be a special ed teacher here. Every time my son Jimmy changed schools, I don't know if it's by accident or not, but John would change and go to the school he went to. He and John were together for a long time. I started by helping him because he was alone, one-armed bandit, and I said, yeah, you know, you need any help? Yeah, do this, do that. John is in the Hall of Fame for Special Olympics. And I'm going to guess that no one in the school community is aware of that.
Nope.
John is one of my heroes because of the stuff he did. Everything he did was for the kids. He got nothing personally out of it other than getting tired. But what the schools has done for this organization, I think, is pretty impressive over the years. I've been involved with it for 20-some odd years. There were parents, the Loomises and other parents that were in this organization before I joined it. And they could probably tell you a lot more about it. But the school community has been very good for us, and I'm hoping that more comes with it. I'll be on the sidelines kibitzing, complaining, you know, trying to get you guys to do stuff. All right, so I want to thank you very much for, you know, instilling in these kids the desire to be involved. Thank you.
We're very, very proud to have the Best Buddies program up at the high school here, and now we have it at the 2 middle schools. So hopefully that will expand everything that you want. Now, I know, Dawn, you had something that you wanted to say?
Thanks, Jen and George. What age does a student need to be to join Special Olympics? And if there's a family watching this recording, how can they reach out to you to join?
Well, our program is a senior division program, and the way that works is if one player in the team is 22 or older, everyone on the team, regardless of age, is in that. They actually start the program at the state level at 6 years old. They can become, they don't get to be in a competitive team, but they're in a program where they actually learn about the sport, a lot of physical conditioning, stuff like that. The age breakdown is similar to, well, take youth soccer, it'd be similar age breakdowns to that. 21 to 15 would be just below us. We're 22 and plus. We have some old people playing.
Okay, but Massachusetts Special Olympics begins at 6 years old?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right? Okay, because I actually had a parent reach out to me asking that was trying to get into the SNAP program, which is in the Hanover-Hingham area.
Yeah.
But
Well, they would send, you know, if you want, I have your email address. I'll send you contact information. They would, like, for your SPED meet, the PAC, what do they call that?
The CPAC.
CPAC. They would send someone down to outline the program, give out, you know, applications. By the way, just so you know, in order for you, you know, a non-athlete, someone who's coaching or just a volunteer, in order to step on the field, even at practice, we have to be quarried.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's pretty strict what they do, and we have a lot of sports-specific training we do online. Even the people who don't know how to go online, we help them do it. But
Thank you.
yeah,
I'll get in touch with you.
yeah, I would love to see the schools get involved with the program, because that would feed into us when they graduated, which, by the way, is how our program started. A certain number of students graduated, and John, of course, was tied up with the school, so he couldn't get involved with them afterwards. And what are we going to do? So a lady named Cindy Levine said, let's start our own program, and that's where we came from. But I would love to see the schools and the Whitman Special Olympics more involved with each other. And when Leo told me about Bob Rogers, and Bob Rogers contacted Leo, we didn't contact him, he contacted us. To me, it was a godsend. And what it did for the basketball team is unbelievable.
Nice.
And for you ladies that are on the dais up here, I just want you to know, we got more from the girls' team. Technically, much.
Fred?
I would, and I would think that as much as the school committee or anybody, and I'm speaking for myself particularly, but the more we do for you, the better it is for all of us.
Yeah.
And I think it's great for us too. I would like to see this to be a more often event that you folks are able to come in, whether it's the beginning of a season, the end of a season, you know, give us a quick update. How did it go?
Absolutely.
You know, let us share in your glory, so to speak. Because I think that would make everyone more cognizant and feel great.
We have, just so you know, we have our own Facebook page.
Yep.
And we do a lot of communication through that. And it's one word, Whitman Special Olympics.
I read it.
Okay.
I read
It
it.
is on, yeah.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to join the page, all you do is log on to it, ask to join. I look at it and say, politician? Maybe not. I let everyone join in. And that's one of the ways we get new athletes and we get donations from people.
Yeah. Does this gentleman want to say something again?
Yeah, I was gonna say something if you get this team and the school together, why not do it in a yearly event for the entire school?
Yep.
Well, annually, but I would like to see more often than annually, myself. Yeah, that's coming from there.
I did want to mention that I did get an email from the school district today saying that you guys are doing an inclusion week. That is awesome. That's really awesome. And I did see, what day was it, Thursday? Thursday, that the Special Olympics Polar Plunge will be here. So please donate and plunge away, because, you know, it's awesome, because some of us did it and we loved it, so it's worth it.
Thank you.
I have a suggestion. Hang on, Eli, 1 second. Our season on April 7th is coming to an end, the hockey season. Matter of fact, the end of floor hockey forever in Special Olympics worldwide. I think it'd be great if the following week, on like a Tuesday or Wednesday night, the school committee came down and played a game of floor hockey against our
I'd be into it. I don't know about that particular week for me, but...
Well, we'd give you a break. We'd tell them no checking that.
It's awesome.
I know at this school there's unified track, but I wanted to make it more a possibility if we could have unified sports for like all season. For fall, there's soccer and flag football, and then I know Best Buddies does a basketball thing, but I was thinking like possibly could expand it and be put in a league and we can actually go against other schools. I just want to give more people an opportunity, not just track in the field, and possibly expand it to all the schools in the district.
All right. Thank you, Eli. Well, thank you very much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. You guys, great job with the basketball, and keep going. I love to read all about you when you win, and even if you don't. But I mean, I was reading all about how you were with the basketball players, the boys and the girls, and a great job. And let's keep it going.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Can't wait for that game, George. Be ready to go.
Okay. Okay, next we have the approval of meeting minutes, February 28th, 2024.
Motion to approve? Second. Presented?
Okay. Any questions, deletions, omissions? Okay, all in favor? Okay. And opposed? And abstain. One abstention. Two abstain. Okay. Next we have the mid-year assessment data. George?
You all should have something of a presentation in your packet as well.
Looks like this, guys.
School committee
School committee,
diagnostic.
this.
I had run-off copies, like 2 slides on the page, and then I couldn't read it at all. So
realized that it was getting old. So we have one copy per slide now, so hopefully everybody can look at it and read.
What do you mean getting? Sorry, but
Feisty.
I have the shot, I had to say it.
I'm in my last year of young 50s. Almost going to middle-aged 50s.
George, is this in the drive too, or do we just have this?
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow will be
All
the
right,
job.
thank you.
So, just wanted to give it to you today. I gotta make sure I know what I'm doing here. All right, so what you see in front of you, what you see on the board, and what you see on there is what we're gonna talk about tonight, are all of the diagnostics that we've done for this year, and to compare how we've done in the fall and how we've done in the winter. The main thing you want to look at is the growth areas, which I can happily say, every class, every section, we are doing better than. Please remember that as we talk about budget, as we talk about things that say, where do we cut, what should we do, is this because if it's an ESSER issue or not? No, this is a law. It came out in 2015 in the Student Opportunities Act, and then it went from there. Massachusetts brought out their piece in 18, and then we moved on from there. So this is regulation, this is what we have to do, and we're proud of what we do, and how and why we do it. You see in these slides, I'm not going to read them all, but this is what we do to make sure that we're meeting what is needed in reading and math, and what we do for our diagnostics. Students take a diagnostic, it has to be evidence-based, it is, it has to be reliable, it has to be aligned, and it has to have an individual learning path. Both reading and both math too. We use what's called Curriculum Associates, which is that's the company, and their product is iReady. We also use K-8 iReady Math as the program itself. Those are all the tools we use for both reading and math. Then we get to the WIN block.
Okay, so the WIN block are what I need block. Part of the regulations that George put in there accounts for intervention. We have to include intervention. So in elementary, we are in our 3rd year of WIN block. There have been variations. This current model is one we'll be using moving forward. It is 4 times a year for 10-week sessions based on the data, based on those diagnostics, coupled with teacher input that has to be also rooted in some data. So what we have explained and said to our teachers, we value them and their expertise and their professional observation, but just like if I go to the doctor and I value my doctor's opinion, please support that opinion with your data. Show me in a medical diagnostic that what you're saying is what I need to be treated. We hold ourselves to the same standard. So we will make a professional observation and then we will get the data to support it. So our elementary model is set, we're confident and happy with it. Our middle school, we are in our 2nd year. And we had some feedback at our last meeting about the middle school from our student advisors. So I went down to the middle schools and met with those teachers. Unfortunately, Kansas Middle School, the classes that the students saw have since switched, so I wasn't able to talk to those specific classes. I did touch base with Bill Tranter, and he followed up with the teacher who's going to kind of connect with them and just say, we hear you, we've heard you, we want you to know that, because that's important to me. The Whitman Middle School side, I was able to see, they went to 4 classes, I was able to meet with 3. They happen to be related arts classes that share the teachers, so I did see some of the kids twice. And basically, what I wanted the kids to know is, well, first, you shared information, and somebody in this district, we in this district, are listening to you. It may not always feel like that, but tell me. And they were funny because I said, do you know what a superintendent is? I'm like, no, and I said, they're kind of like the principal for the district. They're in charge of all the schools, like you have Mr. Frost who's in charge here. And so I said, I work with him, and we can make some changes if you think that. And so they shared some good stuff. And so what the students from our advisory group shared was a good jumping off point to get some more information. But to contextualize a little bit of that, I was able to see they only spoke to 8th graders, and that gave me a lot of insight though, because our 8th graders experienced 3 different versions, so that's important. So when they were in 6th grade, they had what was called extension, and they were great. These kids are great. It was like it was fun for me to be back. And I was like, well, tell me about that. And they said, and so, you know, my little friend over here was like, yeah, I had to read, but the kid over here was like, well, I got to do whatever I wanted as long as I wasn't quiet. And this kid, and you know, they're kids and they're sharing, that was their perception, and somewhere in there's the truth, but it would like a 3 go-off, more or less. Next year, 7th grade, we all as administrators were like, we need to tighten this up, we need to give our teachers more structure, because that's not fair to the teachers to not give them any structure around that space. And so we were like, let's help them by giving them more structure. So that's when we did power block, and we said, we'll do half minutes. And then, so the kids still got 20 minutes of doing their path, and then they still had like maybe 30 minutes of like quiet downtime. But what we realized in that model is not every kid who needed intervention would get it, and that's not okay either. So now we're at year 3. And so now we do when everybody gets an intervention or an enrichment based on the data. That's great, but we took any time away that they could go, take a beat. So those kiddos saw it 3 different versions, and it was really good that the advisory kids shared so that I could go down and get more insight so that we can make some real changes around that, because it was good to know that about the kids. And so what I said to them is, I'm like, well, it might not help you, but for the kids that come after you, what would you like to see? And so we had already started talking about some of these things, but it's like having a homeroom, having some time. So we are going to follow back up. I'm going to follow back up with them and say, this is what we were able to do. And the other thing, our big takeaway that we as a district are talking about in administration is closing the loop for our students. We ask them for feedback, and then we make a decision, and it might not be what they gave us the feedback about. We did hear it, but it can't work or whatever. But we forget to do that step and say, I heard you, but I couldn't do it that way. So for example, they asked me about path minutes. I'm like, why path? Well, I told them about high quality instructional materials. I said, it's the law. We have to do it. And this is the one we chose for you. And I used my doctor example with them too. And I said, if you go to the doctor gives you medication, and then they tell you to take it a certain way, and you don't take it that way, it's not going to be effective. So we have to do path minutes because the high quality instructional materials we purchased say you have to do it this way. And they were like, oh. And I go, it doesn't make you like it any better, does it? No, but at least you understand it. So our job as administrators in this district is closing the loops and explaining to our kiddos better as they matriculate, get older, and ask more questions, giving them the answers. This feeds into the high school. Do you want to go?
Yeah, and just so you know, in 2005, I brought in the extension period when I was the middle school principal. Before that, we called it foreign language. It was an actual class. It was French and Spanish. So we cut that, and then we just basically assigned something that the teachers had to do. So again, it's springtime in Whitman and Hanson. It's year 21 for me in the spring, and we always talk about budget, but that used to be called that. So then it became this iteration. So when they caught up, and laws caught up in 2015 and then in 18, this is how we changed and morphed into it. But it's always an evolution. What we've done in elementary is an evolution. What we've done in middle school is evolving, hasn't been finished. And then we have the onset of what's going to take place in the high school. So the high school is exciting, and the kids said last time the middle schoolers would like what the high school gets. Well, they're really not high schoolers. So it's a little bit different in each section based on the fact that we need to make sure all kids are in a place in front of an adult at all times. And so that's why it's going to change. But the high school will have their WIN block every day next year from 105 to 140. They're going to call it WIN, and they're going to go from their last period class that they're in into their schedule where they go with a WIN block. Now, it's very difficult, obviously, to say who goes where, how do they go, how does a student get help, how does a teacher grab a student to make sure they get help, and then what do I do if I have all these who don't need help? Or conversely, what do I do if I'm a sophomore and I have baseball practice? What do I do for those 35 minutes? So we built some things in, but one of the greatest things we built in is that we purchased, after a 2-year review, something called MyFlex Learning. MyFlex Learning is a software that is an app that can be on a Chromebook, that can be on an app itself, but on every Friday, students will be able to log in and see their schedule for the next week's WIN block. And so if a student needs help in science, they can ask to go into that room. If a student needs help in math, same thing. If a teacher needs to see, let's say David was out and he's going to make up a quiz or test, or they want to talk to him, they can block it off and David can't mess with it. because now he's the student and the teacher says, I need you. So there's all these parameters. Some of the nice, interesting parts of it, it can also be used for different things, but we're starting out MyFlex Learning just at that period. Attendance can be taken right through the app, and then we will know when students are there, if they're there, how they leave. Now, we talk about students in good standing. The high school is still working out, what does a student in good standing actually mean? Because in former times, it might have been everybody with an A, or everybody with an A and B. But some kids are in good standing, but they can only achieve C. Or some kids are in good standing, and they're working very hard, but they're not at the level of an A or a B. But they are still considered in good standing. So they're working those pieces out for upperclassmen, especially seniors. But this MyFlex Learning can allow for that, and it can also allow for, if you're a senior in good standing, you have nothing to do, and you want to leave, you can leave campus, and you can be dismissed right through the app, because the report goes right to the office administration. For those students who don't have, another good part of it that we've worked on is that there will be areas that students can go to if they need, if they have to stay, want to stay, and go there. For example, library will be open, cafeteria will be open, gymnasium will be open. There'll be large group spots that are open, so if a student wants to stay, has to stay, or would like to be able to hang out, they can go to those spaces. The pieces are being worked out because it's MyFlex Learning. I was on a call this morning with Dr. Jones and myself and the company to try to say, hey, let's get it in now so we can work out the bugs this year so we can be ready to go for next year. But it is pretty exciting. And then, how does it work? If you need help, you get it. If you want help, you can get it. So a teacher can book it for you. You can book it for yourself. And then there are some students who we feel, based on the needs that they have, need that extra support. So we're designing some other pieces like duty periods that they would have to help support kids with individual needs that come up from 9th and 10th grade also. So it's pretty exciting. But I'm sure in a year from now, if I'm still here talking to you, that might have a different look too. Because all of this does evolve. But we're going from year 3 to year 2 at the middle school to now year 1 next year at there.
Yeah, David. Hey, Nikki is reading.
So this is like the best part of the presentation, in my opinion. So what you're looking at here on the left side is our fall diagnostic, and on the right is the winter. This is for reading. George will go through math. And then where you can see is K12, K12. And just like last year, you want to see green getting bigger, red getting smaller. So if you look at our grade 2, for example, in the fall, and you see 24% in the red down to 7% in this last diagnostic. So, and again, you want to see the green getting bigger, the red getting smaller. And then we also have included here for you the national norm, the national year-to-date norm, and the Massachusetts year-to-date. And so, just saying, we're doing better than all of them.
Yeah, so you can see that there's growth being made, outdistancing not only the national ranks, but also the Massachusetts ranks using the iReady diagnostics.
Okay. Yep, so this is 3, 4, and 5. Again, we're seeing those same positive trends. Obviously a little bit more red. It does get a little harder as we're going out, but we're seeing improvement from fall to winter, or January. And it's there for you to look at, and there are questions. And then we have, with the reading, remember last year we only were able to show you the winter diagnostic because we had switched. So this is our first full year with iReady in 6, 7, and 8 as well. So here's your 6, 7, and 8 data.
That's all reading. You can see the trends are there. The trends are improving. And again, as you get older, it changes a little bit, also with the adolescence and the growth of the student and their relationship with teachers and all that, but we're still moving kids closer to grade level at or above. And that's the whole goal of this. So when we talk about COVID, and we talk about ESSER, and we talk about the money we receive from ESSER, and people say it's frivolous spending. Spending money to help students learn is not frivolous. It is the moral imperative that we should be doing. So when we talk about how do we move kids, how do we help kids, we never had this. We talked about extension was French, extension was Spanish, then it was a study hall. Now, we're moving it and we're helping kids learn. Were there funds that were used? Yes. Are they in place? Yes. Is it now regulation and law, both federal and state? Yes. But it is money that is well spent because students are learning and they're moving closer to grade level. So when we say that COVID was an issue and students had regression, that regression now in the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District is moving faster and farther than it is on the national norms, than it is in the state norms. So that's something to keep in mind as we have springtime in Whitman-Hanson. You see math, you can see the same trends in math. Kindergarten, obviously, they don't have any of the basics, so they just start it. And then we move forward from there. Lesser deep reds, lesser light reds, more to yellow, more to light green, more to higher green. Same with that, and we'll get to some concern areas, but we have some things to talk about for that. And that's the 6 to 8.
And with the yellows, when it's the mid-year, we want to keep in mind too, they could still be they can still be at 8th grade, but if it's the beginning of 8th grade, it'll count that in the yellow too. So we didn't break that, that specifically out. And then we've got to remember that when we talk about that what I need and that intervention, and I love that we have kids in enrichment, but we need to make sure that because we don't want to forget about, well, I love seeing the green and I love seeing the yellow, that's great. Those are kids. Those red, that percentage is a kid. And we are providing for those children. And it doesn't mean that there's a disability, I say this, it means there's a gap in learning that we have now identified with very specific data that we can now address. And when we see the number go from 25% down to 21, that means that there are kids that move out of it, that starfish, like even if it's one kid, we made a difference for one student that over this course, and we want to keep that momentum going.
And when we get back and we talk about grades 6 to 8 here and how we did Bloom Block, we have students that have definite gaps in ELA and math. We also have students that are on grade level, and that's where they went to the enrichment group. So we're trying to change that, because one of the things we want to do is say, how can we get those kids in enrichment groups to still now maybe get the skills that will help them when they take their MCAS, when they take the diagnostic, like what are the writing skills we can bring in at that time? So we're still evolving, we're still trying to say, how do we use that time better so that students who are at grade level can expand and students who are below grade level can succeed and get to grade level.
But I also noticed that your reds in this 6 through 8, we still beat everybody. We're still better in the reds. That's how I look at it, but that's how I look at it. If you look at it, we're better in the 6th, we're better in the, 7th, with about the same as the national, but all the others, we're
in the race of turtles, we're doing well.
We're doing all right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Improvement is improvement, and that's what's important.
Yep. Fabulous. Yeah, Beth, if I may. I had to turn back to look at the legend to actually look at what the green, yellow, and red. So if we can reinforce, as Beth just said, we're getting better in red. The red category tells us the student, the learner, is 3 grades below. So let's keep that in mind.
That could be that could be our ELL students though too, right?
It does include,
It does include.
Fair, but, right, that's 3 grades below. So hopefully nationwide, right?
We're recognizing that. We're not ignoring it or turning our back on it.
Right, and yellow is 1 grade below.
Yeah.
The light green is early on grade, and the darkest green is on grade or above.
Yeah, and yellow at the mid-year can be like very beginning of the school year. So like at this point.
Yeah, you're just regressed a little from the summer.
Yeah.
And I also, before I get, we'll call it again, sorry. But before I do that, there are 2 things that we measure for students also in the individual report: growth and then stretch growth. I don't want to get too much into data because I'm not that smart, I'll get nervous. But the growth that we look for is the growth an average student would have in a school year. The stretch growth we look for is the growth that we expect them to gain if they are a grade in yellow or the shades of gray. And what we're seeing is both the growth and the stretch growth, meaning that we're pulling more kids up quicker by this, is also happening. So it's those 2 pieces that we're making incremental and sometimes substantial gains.
Hillary, go ahead.
I think it's important to just kind of to piggyback on Dawn, and if people at home or people on the committee are looking at this, oh my gosh, we have so many kids in 6, 7, and 8. These percentages in the 3 below, 2 below. These kids 4 years ago were in that critical learning time of learning. That's like they learned how to decode words perhaps in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, but that 4th, 5th, 6th grade is really this is math, but those skills and that the way your brain shifts, and they didn't necessarily get that in a streamlined way. And it's not just, we're looking at the national averages and the national norm, that's across the country because of a pandemic, right? And that's really important when we consider all this data that I think is lost on people.
Right. Yeah. I think it's such a good point. It's such a good point for us to look at the national norms, national data, the national data that's there, the Massachusetts data, to say that we're not alone and we aren't even. But, and to your point, Hillary, 5, 6 years ago, well, we had kids probably in the red, we just didn't know it. So now we know it and we are addressing it. And that's where I feel the growth, the positive and the hope, because we've always had kids who have struggled, maybe not this level of struggle because we weren't in a pandemic, but we didn't have the data to know for sure who and what they needed. This data points out exactly, we're going to hang up our positive takeaway, but one of our positive, we know those groups are created by standards, by the need that the student has. So I can tell, Johnny needs help in fractions, so we're going to address fractions. So it's that pinpointed is the word we use to talk about it.
And I think it's also important that the older the student, the less they've had time in the program. So that's what you see. Because when we go to the next slide, math, we talked about math last year. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the ELA for IXL, and Georgia and I are going to talk about this, I'll give a little sneak peek, but we're going to look at IXL because unlike iReady, which is our curriculum, and then the kids use it, IXL is what we're using to get a sense of where they are, but it's not aligned necessarily. It is standards-based, but it's not aligned to the curriculum teachers are doing. That being said, it is still our means right now of figuring out what our kids need, and they do a similar kind of path with it. These numbers are improvements over last year's, and the number, so the way to read this one, 9th grade is together in the box on the left, and 10th grade is together in the box on the right, so they're 2 different grades. And then you see the fall diagnostic is the first box, and the winter is the box to the right, the graph to the right in each box. So they're separated by grades, a little different than the previous ones, which were done by fall and winter. So, we aren't shying away that we have work to do. We're also looking, is this the best, are we getting the best data we can? We'll talk about that. It is better than it was last year. That's one of our positive takeaways. And these are our kids that haven't had the curriculum all the way through. They haven't had a high quality instructional material. And maybe, where the 9th grade did, but 10th grade, they only had 1 year of it though, 10th grade didn't. So we're speculating, is there some foundational piece in there too that we are now addressing by having that high quality instructional material all the way through?
Yes?
What does did not complete mean? That means they just chose not to do it?
No, it could be for various reasons. It could be that in the time frame that it was there that you were absent. It could be in the time frame that you were there that you couldn't attend for that long. It could be a number of things. Because at the high school level, this is a diagnostic, and they also still have to take MCAS.
Is it voluntary? No.
No, but if you're not, the window is relatively tight because you have to then gather the data to be able to.
Okay, so a makeup day wouldn't work.
No, and like on MCAS, we have to try to get you to make up.
Right.
Some of it you just don't have, or you came late and you came in between.
Okay.
I guess that's my question, and I don't know if you know the answer, but being that it's a diagnostic, how do this, as a 10th grade teacher, how seriously do the kids take it? Like, how do the teachers present it, right? Because you can't say to the kid, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying to a student, this is a diagnostic and you're going to be graded on it and it's going to count, right? So is that, because that's an important part of this data, is how it's presented.
We try to present this as two, again, evolution, right? Start out as a dinosaur, now we're maybe going to evolve into something else. But what we try to do within the 9th and 10th grade is tell kids, we know we're trying to prepare you for the MCAS. However, we also know that you might still have some deficit areas that you came with. So this helps you with those. What we found is that some teachers were using it very sporadically. They could assign it if they want, they could assign it for homework, they could assign lessons, and then we'd say, okay, now take this diagnostic. So what we've learned and what we're trying to do at the 9th and 10th grade level with the teachers in math and ELA is to say, everybody use this as a resource in your class. Not the diagnostic, but the whole IXL program. Because the IXL program, if you're teaching today, I don't know, the quadratic equation, you can put that into the system itself and it can give you homework and trial lessons that kids can use. So we're trying to, let's make it part of what we do in order to learn so that when we take this diagnostic, it can be a little more reflective. I will say that at the 9th and 10th grade level, it's the hardest for buying.
Yeah.
It's the hardest for buying. So in knowing that last year, we also adopted for the first time at the 9th and 10th grade level, high-quality instructional materials in the form of Kendall Hunt's Illustrated Math. So Kendall Hunt's Illustrated Math is ed research-based. It is excellent that's out there, meets all the criteria for high-quality instructional materials, and we're in our first year of that. So that is Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. Basically what gets you to make sure you can pass MCAS. That's basically what it is. So these students now have a little of it. But if you are a 9th grader, as far as having exposure to high-quality math in middle school, you had a pilot year in 7th grade because the state gave us like half the program for free. Then you had one real year last year. If you're in 10th grade, you only had a pilot year. So even the math that we're teaching them, which is different, it's the math now is high quality. Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but we take part in DESI's Instructional Leadership Institute, and we chose mathematics at the high school level as the piece that we would explore. And the reason why we did it is, yes, we were going to high-quality instructional materials in this Kendall Hunt, but it also now teaches the staff and teaches the teachers through professional development how to teach math in a different way. Because we still hit the facts, we still hit the flashcards, we still do all that, and the younger grades to get a foundation, but now we need to start embracing that Steve Boyce and David Forth might attack the same problem differently. Doesn't mean it's wrong if they can still get to the outcome that's needed, but we need them to be able to explain their process, because by explaining the process of what the answer they get, even if the answer is wrong, you're actually making connections so that you can then move forward in how I analyze not only math, but data, numbers, and pretty much life in general. You know, so that's part of what we're doing there. So these students haven't had it, and it's the quickest one they've had, or the newest one they've had.
I know, I think we kind of touched on a lot of this already. So, and just kind of go into what George was saying, and I think the high school teachers did a great job of touching on the standards, but in the mathematics in general, I think they're excellent teachers. They didn't have the tools. I use a different metaphor. I'll go away from my doctors. They didn't have the tools, and that wasn't fair to ask them to build a house without giving them tools. We're giving them the tools now, so let's see what they built. I really feel confident in now that they have a high quality structural material that is evidence-based and designed a certain way, so it circles back cycles for these students. They're going to receive concepts that we're going to have some positive growth. So overall, our teachers are working and embracing the curriculum that we have purchased. The elementaries had it the longest, so they're more solid. Middle school's only in their second year. Because even with that pilot piece, we didn't have the whole program, and we weren't holding them to the standard of implementation fidelity that we are now. And now we've looked at the high school with the math piece. We are checking minutes. The principals are looking at the minutes, making sure that our students, and that was a question I said that I had from the kiddos, but it's not, and they said, well, you know, or I can just keep the computer, and it's like, so it's not just minutes, it's lessons passed. We're looking at both pieces and seeing, and then we're getting really specific data to know what the kids need. So I think all of these are our positive takeaways from what we presented, and we are constantly looking, we're looking at when, and we have next steps.
So next steps, we have to look at IXL as a resource that is expensive. We use it, we have it all subjects K to 10, and we use it in math, science, social studies, and ELA. What we're finding from our usage because in August we have to decide whether we're going to renew it, is that there are pocket areas that we use it and we use it well. One of the ways we use it is for our enrichment students, though, not only in elementary, especially in middle, is that when you pass through your learning path in iReady, you're at the end of it because now you're out of 8th grade, like it ends in 8th grade. So there are, I think, 4 students in elementary school, and there's not quite a few, but there's probably 30 or so in middle school who've already passed out of it. So we use then IXL for them to supplement and let them keep going, because IXL goes higher to the 12th grade. So what we're reviewing is IXL the resource that we want. Do we want to have it on a smaller scale in those situations? Do we want to make this purchase again? Or is there something else we can use to help really our 9th and 10th grade, which is the biggest? I think the other piece we want to look at too is that we are now part of a lot of what DESE does. You know, DESE a long time, nobody likes to admit that DESE might do anything well, and we just have to follow along because they're the governing rules body. But they are putting out certain things that are of quality that we're participating in. I recently talked about the high school math with the Instructional Learning Institute. We are now have been accepted into the Instructional Prioritization Institute, which now says take what you did in year 1, narrow it down for our struggling learners, and then say, what are your goals to really close those gaps with assistance from DESE. They have outside consultants, and so we'll take a team in early May, I think right after town meeting, so let's make sure it's only one night. And then we'll go to this institute. It's 2 to 3 days, and we have a team from a district in the high school that'll be participating in that. So that's some of the things we're doing for that. And then next year, we're also looking at writing support at all levels. And we're starting at the lowest level. Because what we're finding is that informational text is the issue that we have the most. Kids have trouble reading it, and then kids have trouble writing it. So one of the things we have in line for the elementaries and all the way up is we have support, we have some lines and some grants out there for support for informational text as we move forward. And the last thing we're looking at is restructuring WIN so that students get the mental health breaks they need, students have a check-in in a homeroom type, students still have their WIN blocks, still get those advantages, still have enrichment periods, but we can sort of hopefully make it a better streamlined product than we have this year. And also remember that this year at the middle schools is the first time they've had a new schedule in 20 years. So 20 years ago I made the schedule they had. Last year we made the schedule that they have now. So I won't be around the next 20 years to do it again because I'm not that young. And
hey, you and me both.
We'll go from there. So this is going to be in tomorrow. If you have some specific questions about it, we can make sure you get that data. And if you have anything else, fire away.
First, I just want to say this is awesome, awesome, awesome. I'm so excited to hear. I could sit here all night and continue to hear you guys talk about this. I'm utterly impressed. I probably speak for the whole committee by saying how awesome these gains are to hear. I know how hard you guys work at this, so thank you. I just want to say also, my daughter is in 8th grade, so she is one of those people who has had a different WIN block every year. So it's awesome that you guys are recognizing that and hearing the students. I'm sure it's greatly appreciated when you go back and say, yes, it's here. So they, as the guinea pigs for you to take the feedback, but eventually get it to work. I love that you're hearing that, so that's going to be really good for the students up and coming, so thank you for that. And just awesome job. This is awesome, great work. We're very lucky to have you guys.
Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, so part of my voice, all of a sudden my head stepped up. You did a great job with all the strong progress being made and so forth. And I heard some of the things that might be, okay, we might need to do this. Any other challenges or obstacles you might see either have happened? I mean, it sounds like a lot of lessons learned, obviously, but that you see it upcoming?
I think one of the challenges that hopefully we'll overcome is the human dynamic. Change is hard for everybody. Yeah. So change is hard for students, change is hard for teachers, change is hard whenever something comes into new. And I think also one of the struggles we had earlier was that, remember, prior to 2018, Whitman-Hanson did not have a curriculum in any subject going back to 2002 Reading Street, which is a Scott Fordman early literacy piece. So teachers did the very best they could, and teachers always did a great job according to the standards. But then when we switched and we said we believe the district should be offering high-quality instructional materials to teachers so that they can then take that curriculum further, because it's our responsibility to make sure it's research-based, make sure it's evident, make sure it sticks to the math standards. That was hard. Do I think what's happened, though, in this human dynamic also is that although wind block is difficult, at the elementary and middle school, you do see different sets of kids that you might not normally see. So when we talk about, middle school, you have that one teacher. If you're all parents, I'm sure you bought that, whatever, that candle for that teacher, that teacher, that we had over here. We're not saying that by 2 kids. What we're saying is that students now have the opportunity to go to maybe a different teacher they had for this wind block, and we're creating greater connections. They might see students that are in Hillary's class and David's class and Michelle's class all together, so they're making those connections. So as they grow and go through adolescence, we're also helping their mental health. Same in the middle school, different at the high school, but it's a different animal. So the human dynamic has been difficult. But the work with the union, the work with the teachers and the teacher leaders has been like, hey, tell me how this, if we have to do this, how do we do it so it's good for everybody, it fits in the contract, and we can move forward. And I will say that the structure of the middle school schedule is a collaborative effort. Where we're at now with the high school to implement their wing has been a collaborative effort. We have kinks, we're still working out kinks, and but it's been good. But that inception of, in a post-COVID world, we have to look at data, we have to know what our kids are positive in, what our kids are negative in, where they're at every day, has been a change. It's a change that now comes with laws and regulations and sometimes money tied to it, but it's a change. Next week, you'll see that at the next meeting we have, we're going to bring our SOA, the Student Opportunity Act. We have not received anything financial from that ever, but a lot of it is based exactly on this, exactly what we're doing. The good part is that there's not a huge budgetary outlay that we have to put out. We just have to choose and identify key focus areas to work on and submit. So you'll see that as we move through the 20.
And if I could say, since you asked, I think I would just like to shout out the curriculum coordinators. It's not an obstacle. I couldn't do the work without them. Yes. They are fundamental. And I had the opportunity to speak at East Bridgewater yesterday, and they don't have the model and the support. It's not just about the curriculum structures we have in place, because George and I can't be in every school, and while it was awesome to get down to Whitman Middle School, that doesn't happen. So to have the right people in the right positions to filter out the information that we're trying to get, those minutes wouldn't happen, those results wouldn't happen without the phenomenal teachers, but also without the curriculum coordinators getting that information to them and making sure it's done. So not an obstacle unless they want to.
And the district interventionists. We have a data specialist, we've evolved, we have a data specialist now. We used to have, if you remember during COVID, we instituted this, we still have 2 district interventionists at the elementary level, 1 ELA, 1 math. We used to have 2 at the middle school level for each subject. We morphed that. Our former ELA district interventionist felt that she could do a better job and help kids going back in, and now she's an interventionist at both schools. So she does a lot of push-in work, and she does a lot of small group after the wind block. So for those kids in deep red, she still does a lot of that. So she voluntarily asked to go back, and we've sort of moved the remaining one, which was math, to now district data, so that we can make sure that the groups are made, the resources are made, the things are given to the staff so that they can execute, teach, and then make it their own with their professional expertise.
Hillary, last question. We got a lot to do.
How big, so 2 questions. So how big are the wind block groups? Does it vary from the elementary schools to the middle school?
Yeah, it varies. We try to keep them somewhere around 8 to 10, depending on what the skill set is and depending on what it shows. You might get a second one that now gets you at 3 to 5. I will say in grade 5 in Hanson, again, the evolution of the middle school structure, that's a different beast right now, because it's we have some ways that we can get their wind blocks smaller for next year if we change the times when 6, 7, 8, because at Hanson Middle grade 5 gets it by themselves, like at a certain time, different than from grades 6, 7, 8. So if we can match those times up and if we can share resources better, we can have more resources to address their grade 5 to make those groups smaller. That's one of the things we're adjusting.
So how do you have the personnel?
Because we also do, okay, great question. So, do this all night. We also, what we do now is we try to bring everyone together at that grade level who has an instructional time that is needed. For example, specialized instruction goes on for special ed at that time. So the special ed teachers in the building will be at that grade level's wind block. we'll take the students who are in EL, if they need the small group at that time, they'll get it. So then we take the interventionists, they get it. So the remaining students that are left with the teachers are the smallest groups we can make it. So in some we have up to 13 or 14 at a whack to address a grade level class that maybe.
Which George said I would have loved if I was back teaching.
We'll love it. If you're tired, that's all.
You come back, we got a spot.
No, that's okay.
All right, thank you guys.
Well, thank you
folks.
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have is the policy subcommittee discussion. We are going to be passing over that because Chris is out sick and Hillary wasn't at the last meeting, I guess, so we're going to wait till the next time after their meeting. You want to do the budget assessment?
Yeah, we'll just jump into that.
Okay, we're going to jump into the budget assessment discussion.
So, I usually don't make statements around the budget, but today I feel I need to do that, and George kind of took a little bit of wind out of my sails, and I promise we didn't collaborate, but we're just thinking on the same lines. But I want to kind of redefine the narrative and maybe clarify some facts that have been said publicly and in print about our district and our finances. I want you to recall, because it was 4 years ago today, that the district shut down for 2 weeks. It was Friday the 13th. The day before we were supposed to go to the state championship basketball game for the first time ever. I was on a call with Commissioner Riley from DESE, who explained what was happening in terms of COVID, or the coronavirus. And on this call, he said school closing was a local/superintendent decision. It's like, yippee, that's awesome. Thank you, Commissioner. After that call, I was on a conference call with approximately 25 area superintendents, and we decided unilaterally to close school for 2 weeks. If you remember, Governor Baker then got on news on Sunday and shut down the Commonwealth for 3 weeks, which then became the rest of the school year. Since that shutdown and subsequent reopening, the district has employed many measures to deter any learning loss that happened during that period of shutdown and then hybrid learning. The federal government supplied 3 different grants for us, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3, to assist school districts nationwide to support students. ESSER funds were a tremendous asset to the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District, and in my opinion, we use these funds to put our students and the district in a better position than we were pre-COVID. However, this committee has reminded me multiple times of the fiscal cliff and the end of ESSER in September 2024. Today, we are in effect approximately $850,000 short in the budget because of this cliff, and $500,000 short because we used E&D last spring, or one-time money, which correlates to the additional staff we hired during these difficult years and to be compliant with the law. However, I would like to add that during these COVID years, the district needed to add additional staffing to support the growing number of English language learners that moved into our schools. Nikki has given updates over the past few years on how this population has grown and about how we are required by law to hire staff to assist these children. In school year 2021, we employed 3.5 English language learner staff members, and in school year 24-25, next year, we will employ 11. The district was also deficient following the 2015 ESSA, Every Student Succeed Act, by not providing adequate support in terms of MTSS or a multi-tiered system of support for all of our students. George and Nikki provided information tonight that demonstrated that because of our commitment to interventions and to the interventionists hired to ensure MTSS, our students have not only not regressed as anticipated, but are progressing better than this district has ever seen. There is talk that the district has spent ESSER money on positions that are no longer needed. I disagree. Without the support of ESSER funds, the district would have had to make difficult decisions to cut positions in the past fiscal years to comply with the law and support all of our students. In Whitman-Hanson, we have admirable class sizes at the elementary, middle, and high school grades. This is in part to this committee and your commitment to my past budget presented. Our students are making academic gains and have their social emotional needs met because of the prior year fiscal commitment made by this committee. I understand that we may need to eliminate or cut positions because the current ask of a 5.3% overall budget increase to the budget is too high for both these towns. I also understand because we only see a $30 per pupil increase in Chapter 70 revenue, which equals to $106,000, means that the towns of Whitman and Hanson are asked to absorb the difference year after year in our budget difference. Relying on $100,000 from the state each year will lead to imminent cuts in the future, which is probably a detailed topic for another meeting. I'm really proud of where we're at right now. We don't talk academics or academic achievement, or we haven't been able to talk about that. The committee here is seeing gains that we haven't seen before, because it's our job. We're supposed to educate kids. We do a lot of other stuff. We talk about buses, we talk about safety. All these things are very important, but the bottom line is moms and dads and caregivers send their kids in preschool through 22 for an education. And you've seen today that we are making growths that we haven't seen before. And I will say, the COVID pandemic was very difficult, but because of the stimulus funds that we were able to achieve or receive, we put them to good use, and now we're at that spot, making decisions. I'm going to give the committee some thoughts, so you have an idea before we have to set the assessment next week about potentials. These are not givens. These are not endorsements from the superintendent to say, hey, let's do this tonight. But these are realities of where we're at. We have $760,000 in E&D this year. My suggestion, if need be, is to use $250,000. We have, I think, $720,000 might be different in circuit breaker. I suggest we use an additional $100,000. Both of those accounts, we feel comfortable if we have significant special education costs for next year as far as movements. By not replacing non-renewals, retirements, totaling a 5-position cut, because I have more non-renewals and retirements and people not coming back, I can employ people cheaper. We can save the district, by cutting those 5 positions, $560,000. Before that line, that hard black line, the total proposed cuts of using E&D and circuit breaker would cut the budget by $910,500, equaling an increase of the district budget to 3.63. So we almost cut $1 million. You can see the assessments that would equal to both towns. The assessment to Whitman would be 7.87%, and the assessment to Hanson would be 7.68%. Below that line, and I won't say I'm comfortable with these cuts, but these cuts would would increase some class sizes, but not to the effect, especially at the younger grades. Below that black line, when we get here, I would also need to factor into the equation unemployment, because these would be actual people that we would be pink slipping and laying off. We could also see some savings by April 1st if the staff members that are on long-term leave do not return and my replacement staff is less expensive. It wouldn't be significant, but if it totaled up to $100,000, it's significant. But I can't anticipate or count on that. But that's prior to town meeting, so if I have numbers, we can revisit if we have to do another assessment. Down below, additional 5 staff members at $71,000, and that's somewhere masters 2. And it could be a little lower, it could be a little higher, would be $355,000, which would equal the 3.04% or a 3% increase of our budget that we spoke about, that the budget increase should increase at least 3% every year. That would bring the assessment to Whitman at 6.64 and the assessment to Hanson at 6.69. Total proposed cuts using E&D and circuit breaker would then be $1.260500, or $1,260,500. If we have to go lower, because the two other, the numbers that Whitman and Hanson are giving us are closer to the 5s, we would have to look at an additional 6 staff members for a total of $426,000, equaling a 2.3% increase of our total budget, or an assessment to Whitman at 5.16 and an assessment to Hanson at 5.51. Meaning our total proposed cuts, and using circuit breaker and E&D, is $1.696,500. Total staff cuts to get to the 5.1% and 5.51%, 16 professional positions. And down below, this is what I'm looking at off the top. If we had to come up with those 11 staff members, we would look at the upper grades, at Connolly's grades 3, 4, and 5, equaling 3 teachers, making class size close to 25. Duval grades 3, 4, and 5 teachers, making class size close to 25. Indian Head's grade 3 and 4, making class size close to 25. And Hanson Middle grade 5, plus 2 additional staff, making class sizes close to 25, potentially up to 26 or 27. This is 16 total positions, plus the non-renewals and the 5 positions cut equal a total of 16. We wouldn't cut any interventionists. They might bump, but that position is needed for the law. We wouldn't touch EL staff and special education staff, as those positions are, we need to legally support those students. This is not what I'm asking the committee to do tonight, but I wanted to foreshadow or forelay what is out there. We did have a conversation with the association. If we have to cut, we have to cut. I understand that. This is where we're looking at. The budget that was presented to the committee as far as operations and facilities, and we trimmed, we're not even looking at a 3% increase in those line items. We went to a 1.5. As you know, inflation right now is up. I'm hoping I don't have to freeze the budget in September if those line items are at 1.5. But this is what we would be looking at. I've also included in your packet the Whitman town budget as presented to me today by Mary Beth. She presented it a couple weeks ago. She made modifications to that, and the Hanson Town budget. And I just want to say thank you to both TAs for getting us the budget so the committee can review that and see where the money is in both communities. The Whitman Town budget earmarked us at a 5% increase over, or a 5% assessment. The Hanson Town budget actually put us at what was asked for by the superintendent in the original 5% increase overall. So it's like a 10% increase to their assessment. This is where we're at financially. This is the best what our team could come up with as far as if we need to cut, and I think to be transparent, to give you folks an idea of where those cuts could come, that's important. George mentioned today our interventions, and Hillary walked right into what does that mean for class size wherever. If we cut teachers at the elementary level, the class sizes go up, which means the intervention groups will go up as well, because we're going to have less. We're having one less person per grade level. We've worked really hard to keep class sizes to elementary at 20. We're some of the best in the area, which is something I don't ever get to say as the superintendent. I know my colleagues are hoping that in the governor's budget, instead of a $30 increase, it's a $100 per student increase. I'm not sure that's going to happen. That's something that the superintendents across the state are supporting. I was at a meeting last Friday. Hanover's in big trouble, looking for an override or staff cuts. Rockland is in trouble because of cuts to Chapter 70 for them, are unanticipated. It's difficult out there among our communities. What I would ask the committee or people in town to research where other districts are at and what percentage the towns spend on education. Not just our school, but education, meaning region or vocational education, transportation, and such, and find out that percentage and show up and say where we are in town. That's a big number that has been tossed around by superintendents. Who spends what in district? I know some towns are a little bit more well off than Whitman or Hanson, but their budgets are per town on all education, again, vocational education in their school, are over 50%, and some in the 60s. We're not there in our communities, and that includes vocational ed. So I would ask people to look at that number to see where we should be spending in our budgets for education, and not just the regional district. I want to include Bristol, Norfolk Aggie, and their transportation in South Shore, because that's what the TAs have to put in their budgets. But I would really encourage members who are out there, or members of the committee, to look at other communities to see what the educational breakdown is on their total budget and what percentage is being spent. But as far as this committee, this is where we're at. I do have some questions from the committee that I haven't been able to answer yet, and they will be forthcoming. But I did want to address, Fred, you did have a question on one line item around the assistant superintendent salary that I wanted. I didn't give George a $50,000 raise. He wishes. It would have been a birthday present for him. But the assistant superintendent the assistant superintendent's administrative assistant, we used to pay for half her salary through transportation, which was reimbursable. She doesn't really work for transportation, so ethically we really couldn't bill transportation, so half her salary went into that line item. So, since it's his salary line
that comes out of my salary line. Although she still does transportation work, we've had to move her in a post-breach world in order to make sure she does other things from an administrative assistant standpoint, because she covers various areas that I cover. So when we were doing our budget, it wasn't, like Jeff said, it wasn't ethically fair to do it, so half her salary is in that line also.
So if there are other questions from the community or whatever around the budget presentation, or other questions around the budget, we'd be happy to answer them, but I don't have the answer, or the answers that you asked the other day yet.
Okay, and before I go, I just want to remind one other thing. One of the unanticipated things that happened a lot, and Jeff didn't mention this, is special ed teachers that we have to do. If all of a sudden one preschool child needs a one-on-one, we have to hire that by law. If we have, actually, we had to put in a whole new preschool teacher this year because we had such an influx. And people need to remember that we have to service those children who have the special needs at a young age. And that's a requirement, and so you don't anticipate that, and that increases our budget, which it did this year. I know you had to do a one-on-one just recently in a preschool that wasn't anticipated, had to hire another person. You already spoke about the ELs that has gone up. Now, if we have a more influx of ELs coming in, we'll have to hire more. Whether we have the money or not, we're going to have to, we'll have to figure it out. So, and that's a requirement. It's not, we can't play with those things. And that's what people need to understand, And when we talk about these cuts, which, as a former teacher, I never wanted to see this as a person who got pink slipped for several years in a row, because times were tough when I first started. It wasn't always fun. It's pretty sad. There's always the hope that they can hire you back, at some point. But with this, I don't think there's a hope if we have to let people go. I don't think there is a hope on that. But that's my personal opinion on that. So
just piggybacking on Beth too, so I had a conversation with Mike Loesch today, and we have a program that's dissipating with our students. They're actually moving out of district, which is covered. We have it in that line item, and the teacher has since left. And I was like, geez, I can maybe now take that salary. However, after having a conversation with Chris Ahern in preschool, she's like, my evaluations are off the charts. I need another teacher. So the teacher we hired now is, their students are moving to Duval. That teacher's going there, and I have to replace her with an additional staff member. So just letting you know, the 3- and 4-year-old population is exploding with heavy need. And we've never needed that support, but that's my area of biggest growth and unknowns, because as soon as they turn 3 and they get evaluated for early intervention and come to our we don't know those parents. They're not in our database yet, so we don't know that, and that's going to matriculate through as we move along. So those are just, and again, for the members of the community, those are unanticipated as we go, and we have to, as Beth said, we have to service those children. I think we've seen, and Nikki and I have talked a little bit, I think we've seen a kind of a flat line of increase in ELs, but that doesn't mean that in over 3 years we've hired 7.5 positions, which comes directly out of the district budget. We're not qualifying for any state relief yet. Maybe in the future they will move those grants around a little bit and put us in that area, but we're not. So it's all district funds that are funding those ELs, and we used ESSER for that, and we supplied that, and we also used ESSER for Paris. And I think I said at one meeting years ago when we had all this ESSER money, it's also pretty hard to spend. because there are certain things you could only spend on. I could only buy so much paper towels and masks and you know, and gloves and things like that. So we spent it on people and tried to then integrate those positions and matriculate those into the budgets, so it wasn't necessarily a $4 million fiscal cliff like some districts are facing right now. So it's only 800, and I don't mean to say only 800, but it's better than 4 million, and we've been able to move some things around. And again, you know, by not replacing some people, it will increase class sizes in some areas, but I don't think, in my personal opinion, I don't think it will harm the education of our students. We will be able to absorb some of these pieces. Will we be able to move into adding different courses or whatever? Probably not. So there'll be less opportunity, but it won't necessarily impede education by not replacing these folks. And I took what Mr. Kane said last year to heart by looking at our declining enrollment across. And this is where this is coming from. Because of declining enrollment in some areas, these are where I'm comfortable saying that we could move back. Once we hit that black line, though, now we're going into, you know, a little bit more that I'm uncomfortable, and that might impede the education of what you saw today.
Yeah. Yes, Dawn?
As far as special ed, I saw a statistic, 1 in 36 children have autism. So 1 in 36 may need supports. And you're right, it's age 2 years and 9 months. And if a family's going to a pediatrician, the pediatrician's going to say this child has special needs, and I suggest you call your public school. And that's how,
100%.
welcome to Whitman-Hanson. Yeah. I'm going to have a question for you on this, but also, speaking of ESSER and how we spent the money, we could have made, as a committee and superintendent, a decision to make a capital purchase, buy some buses, right? Mr. Small has made that recommendation in the past, run our own fleet. We could have made a decision to use ESSER money in a way like that, but we chose, or with your recommendation, to staff the mandated positions and the SPED, which now we could have previously assessed our towns, is what I'm trying to say. We could have assessed them in the past year or 2 years and said, these are mandated positions, we have to add them to the operating budget, and we're going to buy a fleet of buses with our one-time money, right? Well, that expense is still there. So I'm kind of trying to prove your point here about the cost is there. And I know part of the presentation here, too, was 11 paraprofessionals that we funded with ESSER, and those are, to Mr. Farrow's comment earlier, we never had this. We never had these interventionists. You know, students in 7th and 8th grade right now, you said 4 years ago to the day, they were in 3rd grade and 4th grade. Ideally, just having learned to read. Now they need to read to learn. Maybe none of them. We didn't know where they were at, as Dr. Schneeway say. We didn't know where they were at in 3rd and 4th grade, and yet COVID hit, and we just expected them to keep learning. So that, unfortunately, was a difficult spot for the district. And now we have those positions. We have them. And we're able to provide the support. I would ask, as far as the budget goes, and one of my questions, which you can follow up later, is there savings to be found in our transportation? And we're going to talk about the bus contract later. But in this budget book, on the page for busing, we are assigning seats to 880 students that are not required to have a bus by Mass General Law. So they live within 1.5 miles or 2 miles of the school, and yet 880 kids are on a bus. So I don't know. I don't want to be the one to make a decision to not provide a bus to them, but is there savings there versus 5 positions that you are outlining here with potential cut as non-replacing them of retirements? I get concerned when I hear courses may be lost and there may be less opportunities because now we've diminished the product, and the product is education, and the product is Whitman-Hanson Regional School District and what we're offering for our families and those who live in town. We are narrowing the scope of education while we're still providing interventionists, English language staff, and special ed, what we have to do. But where is the learning that draws a love for learning for students? We talked about robotics last year. and haven't heard it all this year. And world language, haven't had it since 2000 and something, 2002. So, thank you.
I said goodbye to the teachers as they were cleaning out the summer I started.
Okay. And we don't have a theater, visual and performing arts director. So my question would be, just right now, can you outline what these, on the top here, these 5 retirements, I guess if a nurse is retiring, you have to replace them, maybe at a different salary. But are you able to share what might be lost out of 5?
Not really, because I'm including people that might not be coming back as well, as formally as a non-renewal or somebody who might be leaving.
Okay.
Not at this point.
Okay.
So I'm just saying 5 positions-ish, and then their replacements. And we can go from there once people are notified, but it's 5 positions district-wide.
Okay. Hillary.
So one of the things, I'm sure we've all been paying attention to what's happening in Brockton, not what's happening at the high school, but what's happening with their budget. And so one of the things that they did not account for was when they laid off those 100 and something teachers, the unemployment cost to that. And I don't know.
40%.
40% of
Per
their
person.
salary.
Yes.
Okay, so where does it make financial sense? Right? Like, I think that that's lost on the public in that we'll cut positions and there we're done, but no, we still owe those people 40% of $71,000. I don't do math. Someone can do the math. That's not zero.
Unless they get another job.
Right.
Unless they get another job.
Okay. So it's still going to cost us. So did you, I guess my question is, like, these numbers are, did you add that back in?
So once if we need to get past that number, I don't want, again, once we determine, or this committee determines, that we're going to be moving to lay people off, the panic in my ranks is going to start getting nervous. But once we hit that after that line, I have to include those 5 staff. So 40% of those salaries, that's probably another 2 positions or 3 positions out of that.
Okay, so it's not actually 16 positions. We're looking at closer to 20.
Depends, right, depends on where the towns come in with their assessment.
No, but I'm just looking for...
So it could be more than 16, correct.
I want people to understand, not people on this committee, but people listening, that it's not a clear cut, we get rid of those salaries and then it fixes itself. We are still responsible, and you're responsible for paying their unemployment until they are employed again.
Correct.
And there might be people who it takes a while to become employed, or, so we could be on the hook for this for a bit. So that would be a caution and something to consider. The other question that I have, so down on the bottom, the 11 staff members, Conley, Duval, Indian Head, and Hanson Middle. So on this presentation, you gave us the projected class sizes for next year. So if these teachers were going, this was how we would configure the class sizes. Okay. And then I just think, this is a comment, not a question. I'm in education, and I keep hearing and reading and seeing that enrollment is down and we should cut because enrollment is down. And I understand that, but I also really strongly believe that even though enrollment is down thanks to the pandemic, the students' needs are much more significant than they were prior to the pandemic. And so a class of 25 in 2019 might have felt like a class of 15. A class of 15 right now feels like 35. And I look around and there is no one else sitting at this table who is in a classroom, no offense, I know you're in a school,
no offense
who
taken,
can speak to that. And I want people to hear that. If you don't have kids in school, if your kids weren't in school pre-pandemic and aren't in school now as post-pandemic, you don't get it. And I do think, I think being able to hang on to your interventionist is great, but I knew I walked into that when I asked you that question, because how are we going to do this if we have to cut 20 positions? How are we going to do it? You can't. You're not going to have the staff to do it, and so all that stuff we just had is going to be done, gone. All that progress we made, and I'm not saying it like that the teachers can't do it, but I'm living it. It's hard, right? And so we have these things in place, and all that awesome stuff that we had is not going to work anymore.
The results go with it.
Yes.
So that's what it is. So you have a system that's in place to address needs. If that system goes away, you not then expect to address those needs. So we not only hurt the students who need it the most, we hurt the students that we can no longer extend and we can't reach. I mean, that's what it is. So if Cindy has a group right now, Cindy was a third grade teacher and her class is 18 and her group is 9, you're going to have a class of 26 and a group of 20?
Another class.
Do you just stay there and get rid of it? You know, I mean, but the regulations say you can't. So we're held to regulations that we cannot enforce effectively. So that's the paradox.
And I wanted to, what Hillary said too, you know, back in the dinosaur era when I first started teaching, and I taught 4th grade, and I had around 30 students. There was no interventionist. There was no sped classes. There was no pull-out. There was nothing. But it was a different time and a different requirement by the state and by the nation and everything else. And people today a lot of times will get up at town meeting and say, well, when I went to school, we had 30 in the classroom. Yeah, it was a different time, you know, and I taught social studies and I taught ELA first at Whitman Middle and then the social studies. And with social studies, I didn't have any pull-out. I had every child. And let me tell you, even though I might have had 26 or 27 instead of the 30, it was tough because a lot of those children were special needs children. They needed extra help. And to try to do that, and now you have COVID with the loss of things, I can only imagine. I can't speak to today because I'm not there today. But I can speak to what people say at town meeting and what they will say because of what they said before. Well, when I was in class, yeah, I know, right, I taught then. It was different. It was a different, it was a whole different era, you know, and you can't compare to what, when you went to school to what is there today. And I can't compare to when I started at Whitman Middle to when I went back to teaching and started at Whitman Middle to when I left. It was a big change, a big change. And the requirements of teachers today, every time they turn around, there's a new change. And how they do that, I don't know. I don't know how the teachers got through COVID. God bless you, because I don't know how you did it. I don't know how any of the middle school having to, the way they were having to teach and having 2 different classes and know what you taught the other day, you got to teach it again this day. I think people need to understand that. And I think unless you're there, you tend to not. You know, it is difficult. So now that I've done my spiel, right?
And I've got a couple things to state, and then I will have a motion. But I can't speak to being in education inside a classroom. That's beyond my scope. You guys live it, or you live it, I don't. I can say that we get enthused by seeing our progress, and that's a good thing. If we go back to the inherent problem, and that is back in the 90s, and I know, Mr. Kane, you had published an Excel spreadsheet years back. We were funding education as a town by about 50% at the time. When we regionalized, and all the incentives that were there allowed us to be able to have a funded budget with the state's assistance, because that's one of the caveats to regionalization at the time. And we were able to have town resources being allocated to a public safety, etc. That being said, that was back in the 90s. Since then, we've had overrides for additional firefighters. I know the police budget has been decimated, etc. And then you had your Madden report where everyone sort of gets used to a certain thing. And it was suggested in there that the schools receive up to a 5% increase in the assessment. The problem with the way the assessment is given is the state being responsible for over 40% of our budget, but they don't increase the offering to us by anywhere close. If they did, we wouldn't have an issue.
We're at 39.9 in fiscal '25 from the state.
Okay. So...
We were at 41.8 last year.
Okay. And when I got on the committee, wasn't that long ago, we were at just under 50%. Yeah, so they keep taking away from that area and whittling us down, even though we have decreased, I mean, we had 4,200 pupils. When I started, we're down to
3,500, 34 something. I don't have the exact.
So, you know, even though we're down. So the state has created a large void. And then we're expected in the days of Prop 2.5 for the towns to be able to fulfill that void, but where they have a revenue issue, they can only raise and appropriate so much. There's just not enough money to go around. So I don't want anyone to say it's anybody's quote-unquote specific fault. Now, we do have definitive needs. And if I look at our E&D, and upon recommendations, you're suggesting $250,000 to bring it down to $500,000 out of E&D. That's something that we've lived with last year and years before that. And I get the sense that the administration is comfortable at that type of a figure. Obviously, we can carry far greater of an amount, but how do you do that when you can't even, you know, fund your OPEB by 25 or 50 grand annually? It gets very difficult. What I would like to do is make a motion that, and this would be for planning purposes so the administration can get a sense of being able to plan more properly for our next budgetary meeting. I move that we take $260,000, I like the round numbers, from E&D to go toward this year's assessments.
Instead of the 250?
Instead of the 250, 260, puts us at an even 500.
I'll second that.
Okay. That's what your proposal was?
That's my motion, yeah.
All right, do we have a question? Hill?
I just have, so isn't that going to put us in the, I understand why we have to do this, and this is sort of like a rhetorical question, I suppose, but aren't we kind of getting slapped on the wrist because we've been taking out of E&D for the last couple of years and now it's in our operating budget? Like, how is this different than that? And I, again, I feel like that's more of a rhetorical question, but we're running on the hamster wheel with this. And because next year it's going to be, well, where is that 500,000? Like this year it was asked of us, where was that 500,000? And we said, oh, it's in the budget now because we put it in the budget last year. So next year it's going to be 750,000 or 760,000. So are we just creating a bigger problem by doing this?
Well, I think, you know, just, I want to speak to one thing because I have asked this question before. And what we find is that we're not the only ones who do that.
Okay.
That everybody does that. I mean, even towns do that. They'll go into their free cash. When you go to town meeting, right, they'll go into the stabilization, they'll go into free cash. So everybody does it. You want to not do it, but everybody seems to have to do it, you know, so we're not the only ones. I just want to say that. I don't want you to think we're the only ones who do that. And yeah, we have been getting slapped on it, but everybody else has done it too. You know?
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't last year the first year we had taken from E&D in the past few years? So we had a few-year break.
We took 800 like the year before.
Yeah, we took.
Can I have a brief explanation of E&D and also circuit breaker, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
John, do you want to explain E&D and circuit breaker, or do you want me to? I got it. So, Steve, excess and deficiency is almost like our free cash. In a regional school district, whatever is left over at the end of the year, we certify with the state as our excess and deficiency. So we certified $760,000 last year. We can carry 5% of our total budget in E&D. We've never gotten that number.
I see.
Okay? We've gotten up to almost 2.2 million. And then now, if this motion goes through, it'll be $500,000. That's in case something happens in our district that's not necessarily covered by the towns or an emergency spending.
Rainy day.
Rainy day fund. So what I could use that for is if I have an influx of EL students and I have to hire 4 teachers next year at the cost of $71,000, I'd come to the committee and say, I need to take $280,000 of E&D to support that. Circuit breaker is reimbursable money for excess special education money. So the town or the state is supposed to fully fund circuit breaker at 100%.
Okay.
They do not. They're in, and I don't know, John, circuit breaker reimbursable, or is that what, 78%? 78, 80%? So when we spend a certain amount of money in circuit breaker for our students, that comes back to us.
Okay.
Every year that we then apply to the future budget to offset special education funding. But it has to be designated only for special ed. And what we try to do is designate that money for just out-of-district placements, so that doesn't affect our district budget. Okay? So it's circuit breaker specific special ed money that comes, we spend it, the state gives us back a percentage of that then when we reapply to the next fiscal year. Okay. But that also covers if I have a move-in, say, Just Family moves in and it's a severe special needs student that has to be an out-of-district placement, maybe residential at $350,000 a student. That's what, it's not budgeted. They move in September, we have to educate, I go to circuit breaker. So if we keep $500,000-$600,000 in circuit breaker, we're okay. And if we keep, again, the more money we have in E&D, the better we off with our bond rating. But we, in difficult fiscal times, we've used E&D almost yearly to offset our budget.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Quick one. How does E&D get replenished, or does it?
So at the end of this year, if we were over by $150,000, that goes into E&D.
We won't be though, right?
Every year we over budget somewhere along the line.
Okay.
Somebody
Anything
didn't
left over in the budget goes back into it.
Yes, because we can't budget to the nose for us, especially when kids are kids and move in, move out. If I need a para here, a para leaves, this teacher leaves mid-year, we can't anticipate teachers going on long-term medical leave, so the budget might have an extra $150,000 in that, but if we don't use that, that would go to E&D. We usually don't put more than $300,000 in E&D.
Back to what Hillary said, anticipating. So it's in the budget now. So now we're anticipating using it annually, it seems, this year. Because things aren't getting better, they're getting worse.
I don't think we've ever had a budget that we haven't used somewhere in E&D. Maybe a couple.
What happens when we deplete it? If it's down to $100,000, but the past 4 or 5 years we've taken $500,000 to $750,000 out of it, then we're in
trouble.
You're leaving $500,000 right now.
Sure, for next year.
As a base.
So we'll grab that
there's a
next
base
year.
in there, and then whatever gets recertified.
Yes, correct.
Okay, but it's still,
added to that.
it still seems like
It depletes a lot.
And then we make the
road to
decision
nowhere.
from there. And then I had another comment.
Dark days, that's all,
afterwards,
that's
but-
this, dark days ahead.
All right, Dawn?
I was going to
We
ask.
we're still talking
On
about.
the motion,
Yes.
right. And I was going to ask
Sorry.
to clarify the motion. No, it's all right, because it had to do with E&D, Glenn. And I think I just sorted it out, Fred, if I may. You said you changing the $250,000 from E&D to $260 to leave $500, because right now there's $767,000.
I believe so, yeah.
Is it
In E&D?
767 or 760?
760, it's,
I'd have to look at my book.
okay. But that's where you were getting your $500,000
Yes.
from? Okay, because I was trying to tie the $500,000 out
I think
to
it's
this.
760.
To leave a balance in E&D of 500.
Correct.
So then, would you adjust and only use 90,000 from circuit breaker rather than 100,000? If you're taking 10 more from E&D?
Well, that would have been a subsequent motion.
Every nickel helps.
For 100. In other words, we would be increasing the recommendation by $10,000.
Okay, I hear you. I just wanted to understand the
And not
motion.
take away the, not take.
But I know the motions have to come in separate
Yeah.
items.
I don't need a motion for circuit breaker, that's just budgetary. It's not,
Okay.
I mean, you guys, I need a motion for E&D, but not for circuit breaker.
All right, any other questions, circuit breaker? Yeah,
Just really
I mean,
quick,
E&D.
thank you. Jeff explained to us after the first of the school year start, how he creatively needed people in certain places. And I'm telling you, that was the most honest and direct and best way that could have been handled. And I applaud you for that, Jeff, and I know you'll probably continue to do that. You make things work for us. So I'm fully for the 260. I'm actually fully for above the line. I hate the whole unemployment thing because it does come back and take out of us because we have to pay that.
And I'll have those numbers.
We're not gonna, we're not gonna vote on that tonight.
And I just appreciate, just wanted to just say that I appreciate those approaches you made.
All right, any other questions on the motion? Okay, let's vote on the motion to change the E&D from 250,000 to 260,000. All in favor? Right. 1, 2, 3, 4. And against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it doesn't pass. Okay.
Any more discussion on budget for tonight?
Yeah, I think not.
So just letting folks know, next Wednesday, we have to set our assessment. So next Wednesday night, I will provide answer as many questions as I can about it, but we need to send the towns our assessment. We'll make recommendations. Again, I will get numbers if we do start reducing what the unemployment number would be as we go. But again, this was a preview to say these are where we're coming from. I do again want to thank Mary Beth and Lisa for providing me a copy of the budget so you folks can see their budgets. It's the first time in a long time that we've been able to have that, so you can see, and I think they both did a nice job of outlining the budgets for us to see, as I hope we outlined our budget and our needs for both towns to see. We always end up in a spot, and we usually can come together. I am really concerned about a school budget that increases 2.3%. That is going to hurt, and that's not what we all agreed to a couple years back when the school budget should go up 3% at minimum and moving forward to closer to 5%. The hit for us with ESSER is the big one this year, and we knew that was coming, and that's, again, trying to be fiscally efficient. And we'll get it done. Our teachers are outstanding. George and Nikki spoke to that, and I just wanted to say that they work really hard. It is different in the classrooms. That's why I would really, really press to keep those class sizes as low as we possibly can in the low 20s for especially our lower grades moving up. So that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Next up, you want to open the public meeting?
Yep, okay. The next, we're going to open the public hearing on school choice.
So moved.
Second.
Favor? All in favor?
Yeah, you actually need a roll call.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry. Fred?
Yes.
And Hillary?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Okay. Glenn?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
And Steve?
Yes.
Steve and me, yes.
Okay. So in your packet, people can come up and speak at any point, so.
Yeah.
In your packet, actually not in your packet, just a handout, is our current census on school choice as of today. We have a total of 50 students that are school choice in the district. We've outlined them by school and down below by grade. We will have 14 seniors graduating this year that are school choice. It's a program we started in 2012, and we've brought students from other districts into our community. Just to refresh the committee and to let the public know, every district is a school choice district unless the school committee votes to not accept students for school choice. Since 2012, we've allowed a certain number of students to come into our districts, and we've also allowed students who then leave our district to remain, which I think is a feather in the cap to our staff, because students have the opportunity to go somewhere else, and they decide to stay here. Last year, we made some recommendations, and as you can see, we're not really full. I kind of recommended 5 across the board last year with a 20 for grade 9 and a 20 for grade 10. We do not accept new students in grade 11 or 12. And the rationale is that some students that are looking for an out from their communities in grade 11 and 12 aren't not successful, and I don't want to bring them in and have them as dropouts or not successful students because we only have them for 2 years. So my recommendation, before we set the assessment, is grades K to 8, allowing 5 students to come in as new students, and then 20 and 20, if we decide to keep school choice open. I will say now that if the assessment that we end up at town meeting and we end up with laying people off, I'm going to ask the committee to revisit this number, if you so choose to revisit this number, if we decide to stay open. So this is a soft number for you to see. It's a comfortable number. The incoming freshman class for grade 9 will probably max out at 225. There's 277, I think, 277 students in grade 8. We will lose some to private. Our vocational school numbers are a little lower than they have been in the past, but that doesn't mean, or of acceptances at this point, but that doesn't mean that summer acceptances come in. So I'm guessing I usually lose 50 students, maybe 60. So I can absolutely bring in 20 students for choice as freshmen and 20 students as sophomores. We will add flavor to our district and also add some revenues that we are desperately needing. When the class of 2024 graduates, we lose 14, and if I just take the $5,000 number, that's $70,000 in revenues we lose next year. So when we're talking about losing revenue, that's a lost revenue. By accepting school choice or shutting school choice down doesn't impact the fact that we have students that can leave our district and go to Abington or Rockland. So if the committee says, no, we're going to close school choice, we're not going to accept students from our district can still go. So folks out in the community thinks, well, they closed school choice, my student has to stay here. No, they don't, and we end up paying that bill. So in our budget, and I can look at the numbers a little bit, we've kind of offset. We used to have a little bit more money in school choice so we could add or support some staff members. With the declining revenue and more students maybe leaving, and Teka Academy is the Massachusetts online school, which is technically school choice. And since COVID, we've had more students going to Teka than we've ever had in the past. Not a lot, but enough to impact the revenues or our expenses in our budget. So that's my spiel. If anybody, we can have that conversation here. It's still a public meeting, but then we would...
Anybody in the audience?
Seems like we have to wait.
No, you two don't want to come up and talk to us?
I mean, we can close the public meeting, and you can make a motion either way.
Motion to close the public
Second.
meeting.
I think there's a list. You want your list?
No, it's a public hearing. You could just walk up.
This is just school choice.
No.
Okay. Fred?
Yes.
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
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 Me, yes. Okay. Do I have a motion on
You have a
school choice?
motion to approve the recommendations of the superintendent, subject to the finalized budget, obviously, in a revision perhaps in the future.
Second.
Okay. And discussion, just to understanding that what we're talking about is if we do have to cut people, we are not going, in the grades that would be cut, we would not allow school choice for those grades. We'll come
I
and
would
revisit.
modify those numbers, yes.
Yeah, the numbers would be changed.
We'd revisit.
Yeah, we will definitely. Yes, Dawn?
Of the 7 kids at Indian Head, I'm curious, do you know if they were school choice in for full day K? Because there's a neighboring town from Hanson that does not have full day K.
I don't know that. Oh, actually, I might know that.
I'm just curious.
So-
Or even the other, Duval has none, but Conley has 4 as well. I'm just curious. because I know historically, we had Whitman-Hanson, and I know some Whitman families specifically,
So in
who
district,
choiced to Rockland when Rockland was full-day K.
2, 3, 4 students in district are kindergarten.
Yeah, interesting, so we gained 4.
Yep. So we should keep those students for the next 12 years.
And that's another thing, for those of you who don't know, if kids are already in school choice, even if we voted down school choice, they get to stay until they graduate.
Like grandfather.
Okay, I know, they're grandfathered in. Yes, Michelle?
I just have a question. Are we voting yes to keep it open, or yes, like, I just want to be sure, I always get confused how the vote goes. Are we voting yes to keep it?
Yes. Fred
Fred said yes to keep it.
Okay.
Keep it, and we're voting on the number as well, all in
Right
one
now,
vote?
yes.
Yeah.
Superintendent's recommendation.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Yes.
Did you, I feel like last year, what is the enrollment period for school choice?
So we would open, after town meeting, we would open the enrollment period, and it's, we would post now that we're open, subject to numbers, and it closes, I think we had June 15th last year, before school ended.
And there's not a vetting process, right? So if we have the space and a kid wants to choice in, and they require a one-on-one para, that's going to cost us money, they can come.
So that wouldn't cost us money. If
It would cost the
it was
sending
sending district money.
Okay.
So any supplemental special education, there's an added monetary figure that's calculated into any special ed student that comes. So it's not a straight $5,000. It can go up to 13. And if there's a special accommodation or modification that costs our district money for that student, it goes back to the sending town. So even if we accepted a school choice student who then ended up being an out-of-district placement, the sending town is responsible for that cost. It costs us nothing.
So I guess that's my question, right? Considering we're talking about
Yep.
budget and stuff, if we take on, right, I think we've learned that the students we're getting for school choice, it helps revenues, but not as much as it certainly used to in 2012 and 2013. So the special ed costs and things, those, it doesn't cost us more.
Correct.
So it's not a penalty for us if we're taking in a student.
Correct. I mean, on that same note, when our students go out, we're on the hook for them as well.
Yeah, okay.
So,
All right. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Raise your hand, please.
thank you.
Okay, it's unanimous. All righty.
Okay.
Very good.
In your packet, it came with a recommendation to the business manager. So I've included the entire district school bus contract. And we have an optional, the contract was for 3 years with 2 years optional, and the last page is actually the numbers. The recommendation in the Abington Public Schools have already voted to support this contract. Doesn't mean that we have to, but they've already done it, and we partnered with Abington to write the contract with First Student for many years. Costs of transportation is climbing, and it's my recommendation that we extend this contract for one additional year for the 24-25 school year.
Fred has a question.
Yes, Fred?
Do we have a percentage of an increase?
John, do you have a
And has that been accounted for within the budgets that we've been presented? Roughly 3%?
Yeah, I don't have the percentage, I don't know, but it is in the FY25 budget. I assumed that I had to pick something, so I assumed.
And is there within this contract, is there a fuel escalator and de-escalator? So will de-escalate as well, based upon the average price per gallon of fuel?
Yeah, and this is not to change the contract in any way. So for the last 3 times we've done this, we've extended it for the 1 or 2 years that it's allowed. If you go back to, sadly, in the last 3 contracts, if you go back to about 4 people before John, that same person who, as the business director, stood here and asked for that. So usually what happens is when we talk to Abington and Felicia, she'll be the new superintendent, but she handled this. We usually get to 3 and we go to the 5, knowing that there is not there is not a lot of competition for busing contracts that are out there. So that's why we stay with it, and we've done it. This will be the third contract in a row that we've asked to be extended and that we've asked that you approve.
And it kind of locks in the prices that we looked at 21.
Right.
And we could budget for that.
Yeah.
I believe it was 3%.
Pretty much.
Extended,
Pretty much.
so, if I recall correctly.
Yes, Dawn?
Part of my question about busing goes back to last August. You had shared an email that the Director of Transportation had requested 71 passenger buses, and I remember the conversation here at school committee was we're getting smaller buses for the same price. And that's, I think that was done to be able to accommodate certain routes so that we were meeting the 75% requirement for reimbursement. But all I can think of when I hear smaller buses for the same price is shrinkflation, right? You go to the supermarket and you buy your box of Cheez-Its and smaller box, same price.
We do have some I think we have 3 72 passenger buses. We have 3 71. We have 3 of the biggest, 3 of the bigger buses. I believe it's 3 of the 17 in the fleet that we use.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I believe, because I think bus number 26 at the Duval School is a max bus because of, and it's almost filled to capacity because of the way the first stop drops off approximately 28 students or whatever. But we do have a couple of the real big ones. I do remember that conversation last year, and we had the conversation because we said, does the percentage of kids needing to get on a bus shrink if you have smaller bus sizes? Because you'd get to 75% quicker on a 56 passenger bus than you would get to on a 72 passenger bus. I believe that was what we were talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
75%.
Which, if we're faced with budget decisions, and if we're a regional school, that goes along the lines with economies of scale, right? So why wouldn't we have fewer buses to purchase in a contract that can achieve the same result, albeit perhaps a longer route? And I know we've talked about this, we don't want kids on a bus for an hour, but there are some routes that are 20 minutes or 25 minutes or 19 minutes. So I would ask what it is that we're extending in this contract, meaning the number of buses and the number of routes and the times of those routes, so we can get that information.
We can try to get that information. I mean, we're looking at rolling over transportation for next year, and we haven't done that yet.
Right, and right. So roughly what happens is you see the number of students that you have next year, you have a fleet, you have a contract with the bus company, it's set for so many tiers, you talk about the tiers, there is a piece in the contract that says if you have a less tier for this, you won't be charged, if you need an extra bus for a snow day, you won't be charged, but this is not a contract. What's being put right now is not a contract renegotiation, it's the extension of the existing contract.
So we're just looking at what I'm asking the committee to do is approve the numbers, and we haven't set the routes yet.
Motion to extend the contract by 1 year.
Second.
I thought I still had the floor for that.
You do?
So again, just to get back to my concern is that this past August, due to enrollment, we changed from a number of larger buses to smaller buses. So we're paying the same cost to bus less kids. So I just want to know if we're going to look at that closely as perhaps another cost-cutting measure before we lay any staff off, period.
Any other questions? Okay. Fred has the motion to accept the contract. Extension, sorry. All in favor? Raise your hands, please. Opposed? Okay, Mike.
Thank you.
Can I briefly mention, just a thought, an idea? I never took a school bus. Every grade level, I always walked to school. Even high school it was a long, lengthy walk. It was over a mile. But my town had sidewalks. just for future discussion, I don't know where to bring it up, if the towns provided sidewalks within a mile proximity of the school, or a mile and a half, a certain distance, could you eliminate a certain amount of buses so those kids could have to walk to school?
So that's a good question, and we can bring up non-mandated busing because Ms. Byers has a question on non-mandated busing for next week. So non-mandated busing in a regional school district, any student over 2 miles by law has to be transported by a bus. Any student over 1.5 miles, we get reimbursed by the state. Any student less than 1.5 miles, we don't have to transport. And we cannot charge financially or we could charge financially to the parent to take that bus. In district now, and I could pull the numbers, the town of Hanson has some issues with sidewalks. The town of Whitman has some areas where the town employs crossing guards, but we also have some major routes in Whitman, meaning Route 18, Route 27, and Route 14. So the towns, we've always, or since my superintendency and principalship, we've always put a number on the floor at town meeting to bus students under 1.5 miles due to safety reasons, due to crowd congestion at the elementaries and middle level, as far as parents dropping off. I think back in the day, Steve, when you and I were in school, our parents would make us walk. Parents today drive their kids, and they don't walk, and there's a variety of reasons. People are afraid. Cars drive really fast. People don't pay attention on the roads. So parents are rightfully, I'm a parent that drops my kids off in the morning, Me too. Because they probably could walk, but my daughter might get lost on the way. But those are things, and the non-mandated costs are associated with transportation. So short answer to a longer question, that's going to come up probably next week around non-mandated busing.
Okay, just curious.
But Whitman does have some sidewalks, some areas not, but we do have major rooted roads in Whitman that are of concern. And then the town of Hanson has less money into non-mandated because the town of Hanson is such an expansive town by per capita, by square mile.
Yes.
But they don't have sidewalks in some areas either. So they have provided, both towns have successfully provided buses for our communities for longer than I can even imagine.
Yeah, me too.
So, but we can answer that question next week as well.
Thank you.
Okay, request from school committee member, Dawn, that's you.
Thank you, Chair. I asked for the chair to put this on an agenda item last week. Apologies, I was not able to attend last week meeting. It came up, so I have 2 requests. And originally, starting back in August, I had made a request during open meeting, and it was further approved in our minutes, and that was in regards to the committee having a workshop on goals, and also on perhaps MASC providing a Chapter 70 workshop for us. That request was not, we haven't had that as an agenda item, and it came to my attention that the committee itself, as 10 members, we didn't necessarily vote on that. So while I made that request in a meeting, and it went into the minutes that the superintendent received that request from me during the meeting, the committee didn't vote on it. And I acknowledge that, so therefore, that's my reason for bringing it to the chair here, so I can bring it to all of you, and not necessarily those 2 items, but my request tonight is along the lines of wellness. So we talked about vaping, and at that time I made a comment about wellness as a whole for students. So we saw the special education presentation tonight, and we've seen a lot of academic presentations, which is outstanding, and we should be saluting our staff and our students. At the same time, a lot of students have needs. And along that line, my first request is to ask the administration and/or superintendent to provide feedback and reports for the last 3 years, so it's FY '22, '23, and '24, on student tardiness, absenteeism, and dropout rates. And I ask this just to get an understanding of how our students are doing in that form of wellness, right? Because if they're tardy, there may be reasons that turns into absenteeism, turns into dropouts. And some of this information is public already online, but I didn't have the numbers for this year on dropouts, but last year there were 14 dropouts and the year before 21. So it seems fairly significant to me. I have a second request, but with that information, I'd like to make a motion if the committee would be willing to discuss or vote. The motion is to request administration to provide feedback reports on tardiness numbers, absenteeism, and dropout for the high school for FY '22, '23, and '24.
Second.
Fred, question?
Is there a time frame? Because I would prefer to see that occur after budget season. I'm not saying that we shouldn't get it, but after the budget season, I think that should be a priority of this committee until, you know, we have a solidified budget.
I think that's fair. I would not ask for it to be produced next week, so perhaps the April meeting, if available.
Yes.
Just one thing about absenteeism. I don't know, did DESE waive attendance restrictions in 21? They definitely did. So just, that's going to skew, that might skew numbers. So when that data is presented, so basically like you weren't penalized if you were absent 30 days because we were still recovering from a pandemic, and schools weren't penalized for that as well. So that it might look really bad, but like particularly high school students like caught on to that. You know what I mean? And so that's the only like I would love to see this too, but there are some like weird intricacies coming off pandemic that DESE waived a lot of things and schools didn't follow.
Right, districts weren't penalized for chronic absenteeism.
And because districts weren't penalized, districts probably didn't follow handbook policies for enforcing, like I don't know what happens at the high school here, but my school, if you have 3 tardies, you have a detention, things like that. Those things were waived. So I think the data might be a little more convoluted and things like that, but I agree with Fred. I would like to see this. It'd be great if we could have it in the April meeting, but based on last year and where we were with the budget, we were still talking about the budget in April. So my ask, because I think this would be great looking at what we have for a budget and what we can do moving forward, but maybe until the budget is absolutely like tied and approved and done.
So can I make a couple?
So that's May 8th.
Can I make a couple of comments?
So just clarifying, instead of fiscal years, can I just go school years?
Yeah.
Don, is that or can?
Yeah, I think that's what I was kind of referring to. School year.
21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24.
Which would be this, yeah, so I'm calling it FY.
And a couple of things. Dropout data, absolutely okay.
Yeah.
As far as when the state uploads it, we can get that, that's easy. Absenteeism, as far as, are you looking at number of students absent or percentage? Because I could have a student absent 75 days because they have a chronic illness and they set our percentage different, or, you know what, so we need to just pare that down, and I can get that data, but it's just, when a student is out for a significant amount of time, the attendance rate, even though...
And that's explainable, it's medical. I'm not looking for you to tell me each
No, I understand that.
absenteeism.
So I think we can do that.
Yep.
And tardiness, again, percentage or student, because, you know, Kevin Kafka comes to school every day, 5 minutes late, 3 minutes late, you know, and he does it 180 days, man, he's always late. And that throws our numbers off. So I can gather this data, I just want to make sure I have it the way you want to have it. And I would prefer the May meeting, just because March and April, and it's something that we'll talk about in a little bit later, is taking up quite a bit of time.
Well, I guess number and percent could be done together, because you could have a total student count.
And you just want high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have a motion on the floor?
Yes, so can I have, we do have the motion to have it on May?
Yeah, motion and seconded.
May, yep, okay. All in favor? Okay. And against? No, and abstain?
Yeah, I didn't hear them.
Okay. No, it was on, to have Don's question answered in
Yes.
the May meeting. Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you. And Chair, if I may, the second request is around the same idea of wellness. And the question is, how is the district actively promoting walk and bike to school with safe routes to school? So it's interesting that Stephen brought up walking to school. And this comes from online. There's a wellness policy assessment tool that our district had completed. It's just because I was looking on our website at all the wellness opportunities, and it was linked. It is from 2019, so it's pre-COVID. But, you know, one of the checkbox is that our district promotes walk and bike to school. So my thought is, again, around wellness. We talk about vaping, and we talk about mental health. If you're noticing, I keep the green handkerchief here because I just recognize the mental health that we want to support, and it's wise that we include policies around this that support it. I actually came across an article today from MASC that the town in Northampton requested $400,000 grant. It's from the Mass DOT for safe routes to school, and they wanted sidewalks, $400,000. Actually, no, it's Clarksburg, sorry, different town. They only have 1,500 people in their small town on the Vermont border in Massachusetts. Mass DOT and Safe Routes to School got back to them for the $400,000 grant and said, we've reviewed your area, we'll give you $1.2 million to do sidewalks. So when we hear about budget cuts at the state, look at what department they're cutting from, because there are some departments, they're supporting walk and bike to school, they're supporting sidewalks, they're supporting infrastructure in our town. So I just wanted to add that. So my motion is, again, just to ask for feedback on what the district can do to support safe routes to school and walk and bike to school safely, right? Because there are programs and there are services available from the state that we can ask for help on those matters.
Okay.
Second.
All right, quick question, Fred?
Yeah.
Can we do it?
And I would think it would be very appropriate to forward what you found with those grants to Hanson and the town of Whitman. You know, as far as the district will be responsible for the routes, but in the actuality of producing sidewalks, et cetera, that would be up to the individual towns. You know, and you just hope it doesn't go the way some of the grants have gone this year, where they awarded them, people had spent some money, and then they were pulled back. Gone.
I'm familiar with that Safe Routes to School initiative. It came out when I was a principal. It's been discussed here a couple of times. It has not met or garnered a lot of interest by the principals who'd be responsible for it, and one of the reasons why is because I'll be honest, when does the school day start? Because there are implications that take place where you have staff members at a building who are now responsible to help students get to school via bike, so the grant thing might be different. I definitely would like to look into that, but I know from a factual standpoint of talking to our administrators that there was not a lot of interest in pursuing it at that time. We can always relook at it again, because at certain points the school becomes part of when does the school day start, and how do we make the action of now encouraging and getting students to school. So I definitely want to look into it. I just wanted to let you know that has come up and it has been a part of agenda meetings.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chair.
Yes.
I just want to clarify, Mr. Farrar. My ask isn't to ask administrators or principals to go out into the streets and walk and bike to school. I want to make sure that's clear. I'm not
Right. But when you get involved with the school safe ride program,
okay,
it's not your ask, it's like theirs. And so it becomes this issue of the school takes on this initiative, and then at least it used to be, that you gather the students on the bikes and you pick them up at a certain area, and then you would come down. So at the Whit Middle School, you'd be coming down Temple from like McLaughlin Chevrolet area all the way down to make sure they get there, and then so they can get to the school building. So it'd be the conversations ranged from, is that a school resource officer who'd be out there to help them get across? Is that an additional crossing guard? So those things came up. It wasn't a grant aspect, and I definitely want to look at the grant aspect, but I also want to be fair and out and transparent with you that this has come up, and I just responded to Jeff at the time it came up because that's what we found. That's all. But no, I know you weren't saying that. I'm just saying what I learned in doing it with the people at that juncture.
Okay, my understanding is that part of the service is the Safe Routes to School can send a representative out to your school, and you can have a learning lesson with students, just so they can understand walking safely and biking safely to school, not asking staff to sort of be that conduit and get them across the street. So that's really what I'm saying.
We can look at, we'll look at that. We'll contact Safe Routes for School. I don't think you need a motion.
I was going to say, so we don't need a motion.
We're good with that. We'll look into it and do that.
Okay, so we have, we're going to pass over the calendar and the field trips to next week.
Just for time.
Okay, for time's sake, okay? Because I have public comment.
She just stepped out. She just stepped out for 1 second.
Is she in the hallway?
She's been here.
Here she is. Rosemary, you're up. Oh, we just passed over a couple things, that's why, so.
All right, thank you. First, I want to thank you for bringing up the situation now in schools with students in class sizes. So some of what I'm about to say might not be as relevant. It might be worse than what we're going to talk about long-term results of our spending. And sometimes the reaction to cut can you could be thinking, oh, this is, financially responsible, but in education, that's not the case. When we have responsible class sizes right now in the elementary schools at 20 a class, and what that does provide is better intervention, early intervention, and better class sizes provides that attention that children needs for a good foundation for education. This is the least expensive way to educate a child. Get in there early, get them what they need, and give them good roots. Later intervention is not as effective and often much more expensive. So on Finance Committee, we often think of the long-term impact of our spending, and I think you brought up, we're also going to be spending the 40% of their salaries in addition to that. So it might seem, like we're doing the towns a deal to cut, but it's not really a deal, is it? If you then later have to go and have interventions that might not be as effective and statistically are not, if we don't fund correctly, particularly in the lower levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you.
Can I just make a mention? I know we're past over the calendar, but maybe just a little clarification of how it's written for December 23rd, Christmas Day observed. I think that's a carryover from this calendar year.
I'll look at it, Steve.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for bringing it up. We'll look at it. You need a motion to move to executive session.
Yep.
Motion to go into executive session?
Okay, we're going to have, the executive session is to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual, or to discuss the discipline or dismissal of or complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. There will be no votes taken during this executive session other than to come out of executive session. So,
And
Fred?
no votes after?
And no
other
votes
than
after,
adjourn.
just to be, to end. Yep. Fred?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
John? Steve?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay.